Welcome to Franchise Killer, podcast where we pick movie franchises or wannabe franchises, review them film by film, and see where things went wrong. Or right.
Oh, all right.
What was that, David?
Jeffrey Wright.
Oh, right.
I
The
guess.
emphasis on the W.
Or right. He has a more like or right. Like he talks more.
All right. Yes.
Or right. Like
Almost like Obi-Wan Kenobi from like the original Star Wars.
Yeah, it was funny seeing him in this like so close after seeing him in the Batman.
Oh, I
as,
forgot about that.
Inspector Gordon.
Which he's good as.
Yeah.
I like him in that.
I'm Reese. Across from me we have
David.
And you saw that I almost like forgot what I was about to do.
You
there.
look
I like stuttered.
You did not look confident.
Yeah. I'm Reese. And to his left,
I'm Ron Burgundy. Irina.
Almost spit out my drink.
and to my right,
I don't know who I am.
Oh, well, hey, hold on. I have a thing. Queen of Spades.
The Queen of Spades. Lily.
Yep, that's it. You remembered. I knew you'd remember.
Yeah.
also known as
Noah.
and intentionally spilling coffee on Jake Gyllenhaal's shoe every time he responds. We have
Hey, Jay.
that wasn't very nice of you.
Well, it's Starbucks.
Dunkin' Donuts.
That's true. Good eye there.
Mm-hmm. Good eye.
The movie we're talking about is Source Code, and it's a movie that came out in 2011, directed by Duncan Jones. And I realized we have talked about every single one of his movies now. Or once this episode is done, it's all 4 of his movies will be in the can.
Some people won't know one of the ones we've done.
Well, they can go to screenpunk.net and find it.
Oh.
But yeah, he directed Moon, Warcraft, and Mute. Both Moon and Mute were covered fairly recently. Look back maybe 10, 15 episodes, something like that, for AJ's miniseries. That was the Metamorphosis miniseries. Yeah. And maybe through that and also Donnie Darko, I was feeling the Duncan Jones and I was feeling the Jake Gyllenhaal, and put them together. We get Source
Now
Code.
Kith.
Now
You think he puts the Dunkin' Donuts in there as kind of like an artist's signature?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like, oh yeah, that's Dunkin'.
I love Duncan.
Yeah.
Or it could just be, advertising.
A really well done sponsorship.
Yeah. That's a funny...
Little known fact, they named Dunkin' Donuts after him.
After him, yeah, it's an A, really.
Product placement is always something that I wrestle with in movies because, for one, yes, if it's in the modern world, you would see those brands.
Mm-hmm.
But two, I'm like, I just identify it as like, no, that diminishes the quality of this because it's just
Depends on how
blatantly-
well it's done. This one I thought was better because like you're on a train, there's like one coffee place that happens to be there.
Versus like a Transformers where it's just throwing it at you every second.
It's like, I'm sorry, but Coke wouldn't be in every single household all the time.
Yeah.
It is in a lot of households.
A movie...
Whatever.
A movie that has so much product placement, but I never realized it until it was like pointed out in a video, was Man of Steel. Like weirdly, like remember how many IHOPs he gets thrown through?
I
It's
didn't
just
know.
like
I didn't remember.
I was like, man, there's a lot of Superman references in this movie.
Makes you wonder if they just actually don't like IHOP.
yeah.
I mean,
They're
there's a lot of
just
Superman
smashing
references
them.
to this IHOP commercial.
No, my what is that breakfast thing? And I forgot already. The
Somebody touched my
McGriddle.
spaghetti.
I don't know.
McDonald, yeah, my McGriddle. Someone says as they
IHOP.
yeah.
My McGriddle.
Team up. But yeah, so this will mark the completion of the Duncan Jones filmography, provided this episode doesn't self-destruct mid-episode.
We have
AJ, I don't
8
know.
minutes.
I don't know if this is too much to ask at this point, but when we get to the score portion, it might be kind of fun to average our Duncan Jones movie scores and see how if this director passes the test.
Oh, he 100% will.
I don't know. Mute is really
Mute is the only
It
one
might
that's
weigh
like
it down a little bit.
That's like way down.
Warcraft weighs it down a little bit too.
Warcraft's medium. Mute is mostly negative, but everything else is very
Everything else being the
positive.
2 movies.
I will say Mute is a significant anchor.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like we have. It's going to be close, I think.
But if you're like the high lows to medium, and then the rest is just really high, usually it trends positive.
Yeah. The movie stars Jake Gyllenhaal, Michelle Monaghan, Vera Farmiga and Jeffrey Wright. I didn't get the villain casting. We'll go over it throughout the thing. That'll be fine. If we need to cover some of the other cast members here, but that was the big four of the movie. We got a screenplay by Ben Ripley. This was one of those screenplays that's known. It was on like I think it's called the Hollywood blacklist of hot screenplays that everyone's kind of vying to make, and it was
hot screenplays.
And I didn't know that. I thought this was like a from the mind of Duncan Jones movie because he made Moon.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of surprising for me to figure out that this was like, it very much feels like a Duncan Jones movie following Moon, but it's not. It wasn't like his brainchild or whatever.
Gotcha.
Because there's a lot of similarities between this and Moon. I feel like
kind of similar concepts being tackled. Not exactly the same, but it's like it's still in the same mindset.
Yeah,
they
and
can
they're both
coexist.
and they're both loops of people. Like, well, the thing is that, and we'll get into it, but it's both a program or a government using a person to get a job done without regard to like what this means to them.
The morality.
They're
the morality of it.
discardable.
Yeah, it's a form. It's a form of torture, but it's just not. Like, the technology is so advanced that the law hasn't really caught up with it, sort of a thing.
Yeah.
And they're keeping it low key. No one will know.
Didn't Moon come out afterwards?
No, Moon came first.
Moon came
Which
first?
is cool because I learned that Jake Gyllenhaal was on this project before the director was, and he saw Moon and was like, we need to get this guy to direct this movie.
Mm-hmm. And Source Code kicks off a new miniseries. It's my miniseries this time, and it's just a loose, like, Deathloop miniseries. We got two very obvious Deathloop movies bookending this series in the form, and I guess we're going to get more used to just saying what the series is, so I'll just go out and say it. So we're starting with Source Code, and we'll be ending with Edge of Tomorrow, and in between that, the big, I don't know.
The sandwich,
we've got pretty massive franchise, Terminator. But yeah, there's no, like, time loop in the sense of resetting in the Terminator franchise, but there is a bunch of infinite loop of Terminators being sent back in time to kill. So death loop, in a sense.
Get Groundhog Day in there?
No, or not. I mean, there's no. I guess he does die once or twice in that movie, but
well, it's definitely a loop though.
The concept of these loop movies does come from there, but I understand why it's not in this. It's kind of a severity
Transformers, Edge of Tomorrow, and then Groundhog Day.
No, well, don't forget Happy Death Day too.
Honestly, I thought about going that route as well, but I was like, we've done a good amount of horror. We don't really, and that's kind of comedy horror, but still.
Yeah.
All right, but yeah, that's kind of what we got ahead of us. With that said, on this podcast, we first go over our thoughts on the film before revisiting it for the episode. Then we dive into the story, break it down bit by bit, and talk about the more significant moments. Then towards the end of the show, we give our brief reviews and numbered scores, along with an analysis on the health of the franchise and whether or not this film hurt it. So, Arena, had you seen Source Code before this episode?
Yeah, I did. Hearing the name, it sounded familiar, but I was pretty sure I hadn't seen it. I also may have got it mixed up with Social Network for a second there. But yeah, as soon as it started playing, I got a flashback to my previous life, or
my previous life.
No, but I think I watched it with my mom. It was like laundry day or something, and she just put it on.
Laundry day, movie day.
And it really is kind of like a, oh yeah, you put this on while you need to do a chore or something. Like, anyway.
Yeah. David.
Haven't seen it. Heard the name. Never saw it.
Okay. Noah.
I saw it, but I forgot everything else. Everything about it. Everything.
Everything about it, everything.
Everything.
Emphasis on the everything. It's almost as if you never watched it.
Yeah, exactly.
And
yeah.
How about you, AJ?
Yeah, I think I saw it on TV, kind of trying to pay attention between commercials, but remember the kind of military guy and girl, kind of going with this time travel stuff, so.
Wait, is a military guy?
Military guy and girl. I'm automatically thinking Edge of Tomorrow, but there's no
Edge of Tomorrow.
Oh, come on. Cheater.
Tom Cruise, come on.
Yeah, well, save that opinion. We'll come back to you in a few weeks when it is relevant to the episode that we're
quite a few weeks.
actually discussing. That's a few.
I guess, yeah.
How about Source Code? Had you seen Source Code before this?
Yeah, actually, probably originally on TV, and then I've seen it a couple times before. So
You know that Tom Cruise moment in this movie?
No.
You don't?
I actually don't know what you're talking about. Oh, wait, was that a joke?
Woo!
Funny!
Was that the sound of the joke going over our heads?
That was, no, it was the bullet going through
It was
my
going,
forehead.
let's be clear, it was going under.
Because there's nothing there.
But yeah, for my part, this was one of those 3 movies of the year 2011 that came out where it was like a high concept sci-fi. It was Limitless, Adjustment Bureau, and Source Code. Like, they weirdly all came out around the same
weird.
time,
Oh,
like
wow,
a
Limitless, I
2
forgot
or
about
3 month period. And it was like, what's with these like mid-budget, high concept sci-fi movies? And I remember I didn't see any of them theatrically, but I saw them. It was just enough. Just an interesting enough concept that I was like, I'll check this out immediately once it comes out on DVD or something.
It's like pre-dystopian type sci-fi.
Yeah,
Limitless
vaguely
isn't
dystopian.
Yeah. It's like the preamble to, what's going to be crazy.
Yeah.
Limitless doesn't even feel sci-fi. It just is like, you just take Adderall and to bump it up a notch and you're like, whoa.
Yeah, it's a little more high. It is kind of high concept though in that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would probably be the least sci-fi of the 3 for sure. Adjustment Bureau is kind of that most embodies that dystopian.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I don't think I've seen that one.
It's a Matt Damon, Emily Blunt movie.
Yeah, behind the scenes, there are these guys who are controlling the fate of the world, trying to make sure that humanity doesn't
Don't
like
spoil
crumble.
it for me.
Oh,
Yeah. Well, that's just
it's in the
premise.
commercial.
Yeah. it
Okay,
is.
cool. I just wanted to make that sounded
Noah's
like
intrigued.
It's a good one. You
I'm
should see it.
He's like, don't ruin it.
But yeah, at the time, I remember this one being hands down my favorite of the 3, or at least the one that delivered the most. Like, whoa! Like, by the end of it.
yeah.
It's a thinker.
Yeah. With that said, David, you want to give us that call to action?
Yes, sir. All right, listener, you have 8 minutes. You may not know where you are. You may not know who you are, but there's one thing you have to do in those 8 minutes. It is figure out a way to get yourself to subscribe and give a 5-star to Franchise Killer Podcast on Apple Podcasts. You have to do it. Don't ask me questions. I need results. You have to do it. You're going in now.
Precious time.
Did you do it? Oh, you didn't. Just like everybody else. Back in you go. I can't get him to do it. I think we just got to terminate it.
Well, come on, try one more time.
Oh, one more time. Okay. All right. You have one last chance. Otherwise, the fate of this podcast is going to go to death. So, oh, wait, somebody did it. Yeah, we made a breakthrough. Somebody gave
did
a
it?
5-star on Apple. That means that somebody went there and they went on there and then they gave us a 5-star because they knew that the algorithm was important to our survival.
Okay, I need you to wipe their memory so we can do this again.
Are we doing Men in Black style?
No, you know how they did in that.
Yeah.
Did you watch the movie?
Yeah. Sorry, I just decided to throw in another sci-fi thing.
I like it.
But anyway, if you do feel like helping us, that is important to the survival of this podcast. Giving us a 5-star on Apple changes something in the algorithm that goes beep boop, and then makes us in front of other people. And we're not a very big podcast, so any sort of likes...
It makes us in front
It does. It makes us in front. Woo! So if you want to help us, please help us and do that. But we also have other things that we do, like Twitter, Instagram. We have YouTube. So you can find us on all major platforms. And the biggest thing, too, is if you want to go for a grassroots kind of thing, is tell a friend. Try to spread the word if you like us. So we'll do our best to make it fun.
To tell 2 friends.
Mm-hmm.
And then they will tell 3 friends each.
Yeah.
It's
It's like a
Everyone-
pyramid scheme.
And at the end, you get some free steak knives.
Awesome. All right, and I'm going to come right back to you, David, with that story so we can kick this thing off.
Welcome back, Captain Stevens.
Where am I?
You are inside the source code.
What is the source code?
It's a computer program, Captain.
Source code enables you to cross over into another man's identity in the last 8 minutes of his life.
At 7:48 this morning, a bomb exploded on a train outside of Chicago, killing everyone on board. A man named Sean Fentress was on that train. He is now you. Think, Captain, remember back. Who bombed the train?
I don't know who bombed the train.
Then try again.
Wait, no.
So, what do you think?
It's the same train, but it's different.
We've been informed informed there will be another attack in 6 hours. If you find the bomber, the next attack can be prevented. Concentrate on the passengers in your car. Look for ones who seem nervous. As always, you will have 8 minutes.
8 minutes, and then I blow up again. What would you do if you knew you had less than 8 minutes to live?
I'd make those seconds count.
I want to go back in. I'm gonna save her.
You can't. Doesn't work that way.
Christina is dead.
She doesn't have to be.
You cannot alter this reality while inside the source code.
I'm asking you to have the decency to let me try. What's going on? He's in trouble. Tell me everything's gonna be okay.
Everything's gonna be okay.
U.S. Army pilot Captain Coulter Stevens wakes up on a Metra commuter train going into Chicago. Stevens is disoriented as his last memory was flying a mission in Afghanistan. However, to the world around him, including his friend Christina Warren and his reflection in the train's windows and mirrors, he appears to be a different man. A schoolteacher named Sean Fentress.
Sean?
Sean Fentress.
I was like, what is that name?
A schoolteacher named Sean Fentress.
Sean.
I don't even know what that would be.
As he expresses his confusion to Christina, the train explodes whilst passing by another train, killing everyone on board. Stevens abruptly awakes inside of a dimly lit cockpit, communicating through a video screen.
Sorry, could you emphasize cock more and
Oh my god, I wasn't the only one that heard that.
She's like,
wakes up in a cockpit.
It's a pit of cocks.
there's just so much.
Guys, I'm not ruining this one.
And guys,
say
it's
it's
a
a long
big
one.
cockpit.
I'm not messing this up here. You know, I'm not even reading that. That's on you guys.
I don't even think it's a. I don't even.
Okay,
It's
go
not
ahead.
a. I
Go
don't
on.
think it's a cockpit.
Go on.
Yeah.
Communicating through a video screen, Air Force Captain Colleen Goodwin verifies Stevens' identity and tells him of his mission to find the train bomber before sending him back to the moment he awoke on the train. Believing he is being tested in a simulation, Stevens finds the bomb in a vent inside the lavatory but is unable to identify the bomber, trying to defuse it before the train explodes again. Stevens again reawakens in his capsule. Oh, it's a capsule this time, not a cockpit. Yep. Got it. And after demanding to be briefed, learns that the train explosion actually happened and that it was merely the first attack of a suspected series. He is sent back yet again 8 minutes before the explosion to identify the bomber. This time, he disembarks the train with Christina to follow a suspect. This turns out to be a dead end. The train still explodes in the distance, and Stevens is killed by a passing train after falling onto the tracks while interrogating a suspect. The capsule power supply malfunctions as Stevens reawakens. He claims to have saved Christina, but Dr. Rutledge tells him that she was...
By the way, you can say Rutledge.
Okay, well, I was reading in the moment and my brain was like, what is this?
No, that's fine.
All right. He claims to have saved Christina, but Dr. Rutledge tells him that she was saved only inside the source code. Rutledge explains that the source code is an experimental machine that reconstructs the past using the dead passengers' residual collective memories of 8 minutes before their deaths. Therefore, the only thing that matters is finding the bomber to prevent the second coming attack in Chicago.
That wasn't as ridiculous as the Napoleon Dynamite synopsis, which
Yeah.
was just like, let me write down every single movement that Napoleon Dynamite makes and just put that
I
as
think
a story.
because they realized if they did condense it,
It'd be
it
like a
would just be a
paragraph.
paragraph.
What's
Yeah.
wrong with that? Like, have a paragraph synopsis.
Yeah.
It's fine. Like, it's not the end of the world. But yeah, source code. This was my first introduction to Duncan Jones. I was one of those weird people. If you'll listen back to that Moon episode,
I think that would have been like a good pun introduction.
Yeah,
Oh.
I missed it. I
I
missed
know.
it. Yeah, I was one of the weird ones that had not seen Moon, and for whatever reason, after I saw source code, wasn't convinced. Wow, now I need to see Moon, even though AJ is like, hey, you should see Moon.
Yep.
Like it was one of the big movies he recommends and still recommends. I feel like, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, this was one of those movies where I kind of knew. I think the trailers were like, okay, it's one of those loop movies, kind of like, and we hadn't had too many of these. It was Groundhog's Day and maybe one other. But the concept of making these time loop movies wasn't used a lot.
Yeah.
Is Memento that way? I don't think Memento's that way.
I don't think so.
That's just like backwards or something. No, I haven't seen Memento
Also-
in so long.
I mean, it's kind of in the name, but
I would
Yeah, you're
say
right.
there are very few movies that are like this one anyway, because they're not technically time traveling. They're not like reliving the same day in the real world in the same, like going to Groundhog's Day. That's like just a guy reliving the same day. This is, I would say, different than that.
So we have our first 8-minute sequence before we know that he has 8 minutes to do this, and we're quickly brought up. Well, I guess the movie kind of starts on a shot of Chicago and then the train. What do we think about this opening part up until the first explosion and then reset, I guess? Does this do a good job of establishing this loop and kind of, does it get y'all intrigued about what's happening here?
I would say it is textbook precision for hooking an audience, because you're just constantly asking questions. You're like, he doesn't know who he is. Why doesn't he know who he is? There's a lot of energy. Everyone's confused in it. So you're just kind of like trying to piece it all together, and then explosion. So your brain, like in that first like 8 minutes, you're just like, what the hell is happening?
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah. One of the things I really love, you can immediately tell that it's a well-written movie right from this intro, is in how Jake Gyllenhaal reacts after waking up being a previously part of the military. You know, he's all confused at the things that are happening, but he's trying to observe everything and figure it out before he starts going crazy like they'd always have, you know, people do. They just have the person irrationally like just go insane and freak out and like, God, what the hell is going on? Break everyone's everything.
Yeah, and that process
and, like,
of
shoot people.
Evaluating the sit rep. I mean, the audience is introduced to all of the surroundings in an organic way.
Yeah.
Exactly. You can just tell. I guess it's also his acting too. He does a good job. But I really appreciate the beginning. It gets you immediately intrigued about what's going on, and you're like, ooh, mystery.
Yeah. and something I admire about this movie is it's not afraid to give big reveals in almost every sequence. Like almost every sequence in this has like a reveal that would be on par with like the end of a lesser movie. Yeah. Like in the first 8 minutes, he looks in the mirror and discovers, oh, I'm not this guy. I'm not myself.
Me.
Like that would be like the end of some movie.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, he's not him.
Yeah.
Like,
It's a completely different
but
person.
that's the first thing, and it just has all these layers, and you're like, can it keep one-upping itself in terms of these kind of revelations?
Yeah. And on that specific thought of him there, they make a really interesting dialogue choice whenever he sees his reflection in the window. He's like, did you see that? Like, I'm not the only one seeing this, but, you know, it's such an odd thing to say, but it makes sense that he would say it to her because obviously, you know, she's seeing him as what the reflection is, but he's confused by it.
Yeah.
So it's just an interesting word choice there that I think is fun regarding his situation, and it's fitting.
Yeah. What do you think, Irene, about the opening, I guess?
Oh yeah, I'm hooked, definitely. Like, I'm just going along with what you guys said. There's not much I can add to it other than like anytime you think about how someone needs to write a story is you need to hook the audience, you know, within the first 8 minutes or so. And so they managed to do that pretty quickly. So
yeah,
you already want to know, like, what is the purpose of this? Where is this going? And it's very clever to have your protagonist asking the same questions in a way that makes sense. You know, you're like, yeah, I'm with you, buddy. Like, I want to know what's happening here. Yeah.
So then the train explodes, and then we're automatically put or taken to the cockpit. I thought you would appreciate that.
I appreciate it. Yeah, that's funny.
Where we're confronted with he's kind of strapped in as if it is like a cockpit. His mind is constructed this like, oh, this is kind of vaguely a reality.
Hey, people don't know. We don't know that yet.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, sorry. But then there's a screen with Vera Farmiga's on the other end of this, and basically just gives him almost no information, and he's kind of incredulous, but he ends up getting sent back in to this time loop. I think at this point she says like, oh, you got 8 minutes, or she kind of lays out some of the basic
she calms him
what's
down.
Happening.
Yeah.
I would say this is where my first slight issue comes in. I'm like, okay, if you want to be realistic about making this whole project work, which is super cool concept, sending somebody to solve this consistently 8-minute problem to figure out who the bomber is. But they literally, the first time they send him in, zero information. So they're like, did you figure out who the bomber is? I didn't even know what was going on. Second, she's like, okay, well, God, I can't tell him anything, but also you need to figure out who the bomber is. And like, explain, at least in the beginning, give as much information for him to take in, but they're acting like they can't tell him anything.
Well, I don't know. Like,
well, they did have her explain some things. She like looked at her.
It took
the guy
3 times, and they were very hesitant to do so.
It was the second one.
Well, you have to imagine that this is the first time that this is working to a degree. So you have to imagine they don't know how to handle this perfectly yet, or they're still like kind of writing the rules on
like,
what
yell at this person, find the bomber, but give 0 other.
Well, mind
clues.
you, none of the people in that environment are psychologists or are even really concerned about his mental well-being. So they don't have that kind of resource. It's more like this is militaristic. This is also like science-based and, you know, Wright's character, what's his name? The guy that basically created or started source code.
Rutledge.
That's Rutledge. Okay. So he's not really concerned about that aspect. It's more like, hey, I just want this, show on the road.
Yeah.
And he's calling the shots here.
Yep.
I guess I was thinking like, what if he just said, I'm not going to find the bomber for you because I have no idea what's happening.
Well, they could just force him to re-experience the
and he
situation.
could just consistently go through it and not solve the problem.
Yeah, I know, but that's why they eventually told him something.
I know. Why did it take that long to figure it? Like that wasted time.
Because he died and he wanted to know about his unit.
Oh, I'm saying is they wasted time not telling him stuff to start rather than waiting through however many times it took to get to that point to explain things.
Well, I think what they were trying to do was get him to comply without using any information. Then when they realized they couldn't do that,
I do
go across.
Agree with you though that it would make more sense if they had more of a system or like a kind of a protocol on what to do if the person doesn't know what's happening and there's obvious confusion. So I know that she sends him through that calming mechanism to like reorient himself and reframe himself, but at least if there was something where, hey, you're part of our team or whatever, make him included kind of a thing, and we're sending you back. There's confusion that happens with all of this, which is natural. Just something that was at least more calming than just, hey, we don't have time for this. That question is irrelevant. Go
maybe
back.
that's part of maybe that's how you're supposed to speak to someone like this, though, who's used to like taking orders. Like, hey, you have one goal. Now you know that you're just going to blow up at the end of this thing. Just find the bomb. Maybe that'll buy you some time. Like, he doesn't know. Like, oh, maybe there'll be more time to figure out what's going on the other end of this if I just do this. I don't know. I didn't think that much of it.
I was mad. Not like actual mad.
I wasn't mad.
I just remembered like the way she was talking to him. I was like, this feels very counterproductive. Like, I feel like you're not going to get your answers quicker this way.
Yeah.
But that's, I mean, again, they have their own way of doing it.
I think you're probably empathizing with him.
No, it's not empathy.
Okay.
I legitimately think it's just counterproductive to their plan.
We're hashing it out too much, but I think something to side with them is this is obviously not the first time this has happened to him, where they have to talk him down and remind him. So when you think about it, there must be like at least an element of frustration where they're like, we don't have time for this kind of a thing. We have to, move on, because he could have had this whole confusing list of questions for them thousands of times before when they were experimenting with this process. So like it does make sense to that degree.
Yeah. I will also ask at this point, I don't know if you can take yourselves back to the first time you saw this movie for those that hadn't seen it. And maybe this is more a question for you, David. How long did it take you to figure out that he was either dead or incapacitated in real life or something?
I would say pretty quickly.
Would it be at this first part here?
In the very first point, no. I would say...
right when things started changing around him.
Well, you start wondering how he's in this one thing. My first thought was, there's nothing connected to him. So I was like, how is he going? Is it a time capsule? But then once I realized that they didn't seem to understand what he was in, that kind of clued me in to figure it out.
Yeah. So, but before... Sorry,
go ahead.
Before... what I feel about this movie, though, specifically, is if you figure it out or not, it doesn't matter. Like, because I don't think I think the movie works whether you call it early or not.
Well,
like it's
why do you need to?
Well, some movies, like, they relish that reveal of, like, oh, he's dead. And this kind of has a moment later on where, like, you see his body. And future spoilers, obviously, but that's what we're doing here. In this movie, it's kind of just lays it out. It's like, it's not really afraid if you figure it out, that element. Because it knows you're not going to figure out the final moment of the movie. Like, you're not going to predict the little ending moment, which is the actual important thing to... I don't know, kind of
take away.
Yeah. But yeah, I think I figured it out pretty quickly too, although I don't want to give myself too much credit. I probably didn't. Thinking back then, I'm very gullible when I'm being given a movie and my brain isn't thinking ahead of what's happening.
Yeah. We're not just all trying to be like critical thinkers when we watch movies. It's just supposed to be relaxing.
I mean,
something,
at least kind of sets off your suspicion when they're evasive about, where his dad is, where his unit is and stuff. So
yeah, you would think, like, watching it a second or a third, however many times I've seen this, when he learns that he was in like a helicopter or something, I'm like, oh, it's so obvious. Like, obviously he, like, something happened.
Right.
He was like in a war.
Well, I just assumed he went down and something happened and then they just abducted him and put him in this experiment. That was my first thought. Like, he was just knocked out and then taken.
Yeah. Okay, but in the second, I think it's the second sequence where, so we start to see the guy who drops his wallet. This could be the second. I'm gonna get the individual loops mixed up in terms of what happens in each one, but I'll kind of try to keep it on track. But it's either the second or third loop where he actually finds the bomb, and it's pretty early on.
I was surprised how early it was.
Yeah. And that's another thing where it's like, oh, found the bomb already. Okay. Like, this movie's just moving.
Well, I think it also makes sense with the type of character he is, like, especially if he's military or just someone involved with very serious matters. I think he's quick to analyze, okay, where could you possibly hide something?
Yeah.
And so he knocks them out quickly. And I could see that happening. Like, it makes sense. Like, civilians don't think to, oh, yeah, I'm just going to open up the top of the roof here, and just look around.
Yeah.
Like, it's not something that a bomber would expect a normal civilian to do, but he's not. So I think it would be pretty quick for most people if they were told, you have 8 minutes, go find a bomb. You're like, okay, well, I'm going to check the bathroom. I'm going to see if any of these panels are loose.
Yeah. After watching movies like this, the bathroom and checking the air vent is always the go-to now.
Oh, he remembers where the explosion came from, and that's how he, like, kind of traced it. He's like, oh, the explosion came from this way, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And we haven't talked about Michelle Monaghan, or Moynihan, however you say her name. I think she does fine with what she's given in this role, but I don't know, I can't describe, like, it's a good performance.
I think she's supposed to be somewhat robotic.
Yeah, she almost seems kind of aloof.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the big things to take away is that because you're going through a loop, she has to act consistent throughout the whole movie. There's not a lot of development because of that, but you get to see different aspects based on what he does.
Exactly.
So sometimes she's sweet, sometimes she's very brutally honest, as he says.
Well, that's one thing I actually really liked her. I know some people might.
I actually liked her too overall.
But what I really liked is that at the beginning she was like a little robotic the first couple of times. Then she's even more robotic as he does the little montage of going
took your advice.
Yeah, exactly. But after that, once he starts, getting to know her more, she comes to life and is much more interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
AJ, you had something to say?
I'm glad I wasn't the only one that kind of thought that she was, kind of synthetic. But now that Noah puts it in that perspective, I think that's actually a positive attribute instead of detractor overall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the conversation is weird. It's kind of weirdly structured. Like, she's like, I took your advice. I'm doing this. And it's like, well, yeah, you got on the train with me to go do this thing. Like, why are we having this conversation? Like, as we're,
I guess because it feels like it's a start of a conversation instead of like you're being put into the middle of an existing one.
Oh, I thought it was at the middle of a conversation. Like, something prompted her to say that, but we don't get to hear what it was.
I don't know. It's a nitpick. I also, if I have to nitpick again, all the people on this train seem like caricatures. Like,
oh yeah,
they're all like cartoon characters. Like the people on this train seem like they walked off the set of like Elf or something.
Well, it's kind of like Who almost, but localized to a train.
But you got your New York comedian.
Yeah.
You got your guy who looks like
Business.
business. I'm making money right now. That guy.
If you think
And then
about
the guy on his phone who's like, I'm late. And I gotta
Yeah.
get there.
Yeah.
Hurry up the train.
if you think about the technology that they kind of explain how it works, the source code, so to speak, of the amygdala or whatever hypothalamus, I can't remember what's part of the brain like keeps these resonant memories after death. I would assume that some of these personalities will be kind of distilled and concentrated, and because that's how memory works. So since he's reliving it through that, then it kind of fits that.
Yeah, and I'm the whole time I'm trying to view this through the lens of like how the movie ends, where it's like, oh, maybe this is how this like splinter of this thing works. Like it's just a little like off. Or
I
different.
definitely have some questions that we could talk about at the end.
How far into the plot did it go on that portion there?
I
Where did
had
it
a
end?
pretty good stop.
Just repeats like 10 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So he just learns what source code is. It doesn't actually go into too much of the plot. It's more about like what he's learning.
Did he catch the guy yet though?
No.
No.
I think around this point when he finds out what it is, he sort of strikes a deal where he's like, I'll do this for you if you let me die, basically, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Where that's sort of around this area because he has at least one motivation to keep going.
So that is in the next part. I can start. We can just jump into the next part if we want.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff that happens where it's almost like playing one of those choice-based video games, but you keep going back to the same point.
I was thinking the same thing.
And you're like, okay, I chose the aggressive approach. Now
Yeah.
I'm going to choose the passive one or something,
old-
or I'm going to go this direction instead of that direction.
I
It
I
has
agree.
just a several scenarios that are
It's
kind
like
of like
Goosebumps.
that.
Choose. You know,
Pushed
you
together.
turn to this page to get this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is exactly like, to me, this was, I was thinking like, man, this is like a game where, you know, an event happens, you have to solve it. And, you know, anytime he's in the world, you're like given free reign to go search for clues
Yeah.
and like find.
In a
like,
way,
oh,
it's like that
this, and
combined with a murder mystery
Yeah.
because you think. I mean, it is, I guess, kind of a murder mystery.
Well, no,
but
this is like train who.
murder on the Chicago Express.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, the part I did miss is he does try getting off the train with her at one point,
Yeah.
and then gets hit by the train.
Yep.
I love how he
Oh,
gets
gosh.
knocked into the tracks and then he's just standing there like, get
Yeah.
out! And he just
I'll-
gets run
He's like,
over.
thanks, bud.
I also like that moment where he's like tracking that one guy and he just like sits right next to him on the
Yeah, I
bench.
know.
Yeah.
He's like, "What's she doing?" Or
The guy's
whatever.
like,
What you doing?
When he thinks it's a simulation, he does take it very seriously. I was thinking if it was me, I'd be so much more awkward. But I guess one, being military, and
Yeah.
two, being like, it's a simulation, I can do whatever I want.
Well,
He's very aggressive.
I think they nailed it for this aspect. He's willing to take a lot more, you know, risks than you know, like with this knowledge,
Mhm.
Yeah.
but also he keeps his humanity intact during this time by
Right.
never shooting anybody.
Well, he
never
doesn't.
shoots anybody.
It's actually going to hurt his chances of figuring out who it is if he does act out too much
Draw too
because
much
people will
attention.
try to
Yeah.
restrain him.
yeah, they
That
lock,
too,
they
but-
lock him up.
Yeah, and then
But-
the
but-
train explodes.
But if you recall, I mean, the guy is like, you know, anyone that gets in your way, just, you know, shoot him, and he never takes that aggressive of an approach. He is always
I know
the
what you're
protector
saying. There's
and,
like he still holds that sense of
Yeah.
that humanity where he's
Yeah.
like
He punches some.
Well,
he socks some
They're in
guys pretty
Chicago.
hard.
They don't have
but,
guns
like-
anyway.
yeah, they kind of deserve
Completely
it. though.
crime free.
Not to take us off track here.
Ha-
So we have the kind of dynamic between him and Michelle Monaghan's character, and then we also have the dynamic between him and Vera Farmiga's character, and they kind of mirror each other inversely, I guess you could say. Well, no, not inversely, directly over the course of the movie.
Yeah.
How, were you on board with the rapport kind of development there in the capsule? Well, you know, with her on the screen.
I really was. And I think it's mostly because of the two actors we have here playing together. I think Vera Farmiga and Jake Gyllenhaal are kind of on the same wavelength as far as acting capability and being able to kind of have subtle emotion show when they're talking. So I liked her like kind of slow warming up to him. Like you could tell she was trying to keep sort of like this ice cold, like this is just business kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And the, lives are on the line, all that stuff. But I just love her as an actress. Like everything I've seen her in, and just the expression she has in her eyes, where like
very kind eyes.
She won't make an expression, but you can see in her eyes that there was a shift. Like
she is great. Yeah,
I also love both of these actors' ability to have play characters that are warm, but also characters that can be cold.
Yeah.
And like, because I think of her role in like The Conjuring as the perfect example of running both hot and cold, oscillating between the two very quickly. And Jake Gyllenhaal's the same way, where like I see this as a warmer character, whereas like you watch Nightcrawler and it's a completely different side.
Or Donnie Darko.
Yeah, Donnie Darko. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I do wish that we got to see a little more of
You know
her.
what's weird?
You don't get to see her too terribly much,
Yeah.
but I guess that might be at the expense of knowledge unfolding the right way.
The
So,
strange
I don't
thing
know.
is I felt more chemistry between those two than I did with the woman he was actually sitting on the
Christine.
train with.
Interesting.
Like, yeah.
I think
Christine.
their chemistry eventually gets there, but
It does.
But I also kind of think the awkwardness is intentional at the beginning, like
It is.
the lack of
Yeah.
chemistry, because he's literally in another
Oh, yeah,
dude's
no,
body.
he's-
Well, I was
like
going
a
to say,
completely
there's not.
different
Why is
person.
there supposed to be chemistry? Because I think he is purposefully not leaning into trying to, like, he does not care about her.
Yeah, he
at
doesn't
all.
know her.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you could see in her eyes, like, she's trying to make the connection, and he is like shutting it down. Eventually, after doing this so many times,
Yeah.
he builds up that rapport with her.
Yeah, he
Yeah, I
starts
think-
to like her. Yeah,
I think what I mean by chemistry is not so much romantic chemistry. It's just
Yeah.
there's even between two characters that aren't even in the same room. Like they had immediate connection in my mind, where there's an understanding, there's some strange
Soldier to
kind
soldier.
of bond,
Yeah.
and I think that part was done really well
Yeah.
in this film.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think what was cool was their relationship. It was kind of like they grew a friendship, a sense of
It was
camaraderie.
and kind of like what he says
Mhm.
later in the movie, soldier to
it's-
soldier.
yep,
You
yep.
know, like
Yeah.
there's that
Am
kind
I-
of
Am I
point
dead?
of-
Am I dead?
Yeah, there's that point of connection or appeal to her
Mhm.
where it's like you're the of all people, you should know what I'm going through. You know,
Yeah.
David, you want to continue that story for us?
On his next run-in, Stevens learns that he was reported as killed in action 2 months ago. He confronts Goodwin, who reveals that he is missing most of his body and on life support hooked up to neural sensors. The capsule and his healthy body are manifestations made by his mind to make sense of the environment. Stevens is angry at the forced imprisonment. Rutledge offers to terminate Stevens after the mission, and Stevens eventually accepts. After numerous attempts, including being arrested by the train security for trying to obtain a weapon, Stevens identifies the bomber through a fallen wallet, a nihilistic domestic terrorist named Derek Frost. Stevens memorizes Frost's license and vehicle registration plates. He discovers a dirty bomb built inside a van owned by Frost. As Christina follows him, and both are shot dead by Frost. Outside source code, he relays his knowledge to Goodwin, which helps the police arrest Frost and prevents the second attack. Stevens is congratulated for completing his mission. Rutledge secretly reneges on his deal to let Stevens die, as he is still the only candidate who can enter source code, or so they think. Being more sympathetic to his plight, Goodwin sends Stevens back one last time and promises to disconnect his life support after 8 minutes. This time, he sets a date with Christina, defuses the bomb, apprehends Frost, and reports him to the police. He calls his father under the guise of a fellow soldier and reconciles with him, and sends Goodwin an email. After 8 minutes, Goodwin terminates Stevens' life support. As the world around him continues to progress beyond 8 minutes, Stevens confirms his suspicion that the source code is not merely a simulation, but rather a machine that allows him to create an alternate timeline. Christina and he leave the train and go on a date. In the same alternate reality, Goodwin receives Stevens' message. He tells her of the source code's true capability and asks her to help the alternate reality version of himself.
It's so good.
Cool ending.
I love it.
I also when we were going over looped events, it suddenly dawned on me another movie or story that we overlooked.
All right.
And that's literally The Time Machine.
Oh.
Do you remember that?
Guy Pearce?
Well, but it was based on H.G. Wells'
original.
Time Machine.
No, I like the remake more.
Time Traveler's
There's
Wife?
also
No, Hot Tub Time Machine.
if we're naming these like death loop type things, and you also have to mention that episode of Supernatural. If you
Which I
ever
don't watch
watched
that
it.
show.
Yeah, well,
But I believe you.
Yeah, they like Dean dies.
You have to have
like,
a time machine if
numerous
they last
times
like
it
16
resets.
seasons or whatever it was.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm so disappointed in that show. We should probably stop talking about it,
Dean!
but my goodness, it makes me so mad.
You know, Jake Gyllenhaal has been in 3 multiverse movies now.
I know, that's what I was thinking. Well, he just barely died. He was almost in one.
Well, almost
Endgame. But,
well, I was thinking. Well, I mean, it could have been. He was a part of a movie that had a multiverse.
yeah,
in
but
it.
Johnny
Anyway.
Darko, this one, but yeah,
Sorry
I wanted
to throw us off.
I wanted to talk about how he figures out that he's dead. We touched on it last time.
Well, he discovered he saw the patch of Goodwin when he was in the capsule, and so when he went back in, he used his freedom, I guess, on the train to spend that time researching her patch, sort of what sort of Air Force, I guess, branch she was a part of, and also what happened to him.
Right.
So he had Christina research who he was. So that was that
or
portion.
like where he is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where he learns he was dead. So.
Mm-hmm. I love the way
Or reported dead.
I love how throughout the movie he more and more impersonates who he looks like.
Fentress or whatever.
Yeah.
Sean.
Yeah, whatever his name is,
Sean.
doesn't matter. But just how he more naturally starts coming into his role as that and playing things off really well. And, like, here, I'll just be back in a couple minutes and I'm going to go take care of this or whatever. I'm going to go save the world.
That was smooth.
Yeah, where he just, instead of, just being about the mission, he's retaining his sense of sanity there to not freak people out.
Yeah.
So I like that he, like, slowly, absorbs that role really well.
So, given what we know about how this world works and how it's creating these alternate timelines, does that mean that there were, like, however many loops worth of timelines created in this movie where other things, like, it played out this way? Like, every time he's reset, is that a new timeline that went beyond the 8 minutes after he
We'll never
died?
know.
That's a good question.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I
Yeah.
do.
Like, there's
No,
one-
I think it does. I think based on the way it ends, it does, because he said, "I saved her" in this one.
Right.
Alternate realities, man.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I
And he
think
committed a
I
hate
think
crime
it
in
did.
another one.
Yeah. I should have done my research more on this, but is how does this actually work? So where is the handshake with this? Do they have this Fentress guy's body, and they have this and then they have his body, and so it's the last 8 minutes.
Yeah,
of
like
this
how
guy,
did they get the consciousness?
like
of
how
Sean
they
Fentress?
get Fentress's consciousness?
Oh, I wondered the same thing.
That's
Yeah.
I don't know why I forgot that twice in a row.
His body.
No, it was all blown up on a train.
Yeah, like he's toast.
Yeah, that train.
No,
you think
no,
they
no,
dug
no.
through the
Remember
rubble?
They had to find a compatible.
They did, yes, but they had to find it through the source code. I don't think.
Just because there's an explosion doesn't mean he was entirely
Yeah,
vaporized.
so here's the thing. They're trying to stop this. So in this reality, the train is blown up already, but they're trying to stop the terrorist from doing future stuff. Inevitably, like, or I was led to believe, like on the same day or at least soon after.
Right.
So I guess it does make sense if they did pull the body from the rubble,
Yeah.
and maybe that was like
that had to have
that was the most salvageable body
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
closest to the synapses or whatever were
yeah
like similar. I don't know.
body size, mental things, whatever.
They must have like some kind of government funding so that they have that kind of access,
Yeah.
because it's
Because they said it was hours after the explosion. So somehow, in hours after that train that blew up on like a bridge outside of Chicago, they somehow dug through the rubble, found that body, got it transported to this
Yeah.
facility, and hooked it up immediately.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
I
man.
Shouldn't
think
they,
this-
shouldn't they
Yeah,
have the two
'cause they-
bodies like spooning in a capsule or something together?
I
I think that's entirely. I
And why don't they ever show it?
That's
if it's that
because
obvious?
it would ruin the
So
mystery.
I think
I guess.
when you're thinking about this movie,
it's
you have
plausible.
to think about it in basically the concept of pure science fiction.
Mhm.
Where if you look back on science fiction, from the early days, we even mentioned H.G. Wells, like some of it is based in fact, but when you think about it, it's like this couldn't plausibly happen during that time frame. But it's purely just for a concept. It's like you have to start at this base where you're like, okay, clean the slate. Imagine a scenario where this was possible. This brings up a question that people don't really ask themselves, but it is a question that is more philosophical than it is realistic, I guess. So even if you can't answer that question, I think this movie is more about the concept than it is
the idea
whether this could happen.
Okay, I have another thing to branch off of that, actually. That ties in with what we were just discussing with whether or not it's inside the brain of the other guy. The reason I actually don't think it is because if you're tied to that guy's brain, you're going through his sort of illumination the last 8 minutes of his life, you would only be able to see what he saw, right? Like, how would the world exist within him?
So that's one of the main points of the movie, is that's what the people who made the machine think, that he can't do anything outside of this realm. Nothing's going to change. But really,
well, I meant more like, how does anything exist outside of, like, he wouldn't even be able to move freely through this area, and if it's just a memory that he was transported into.
Well,
That's what they think it is.
Yeah.
But it is actually a new reality created that is fully explorable, fully like that.
I don't know what the science behind that. I don't know if the science behind that will ever make sense.
One in which
it's very hard to conceptualize.
Coulter actually kills Sean, and Sean ceases to exist anymore, and now it's Coulter.
Or he starts to assimilate into Sean and becomes Sean over time.
Yeah, so this was the interesting thing on that topic. I did wonder, like, man, what happened to Sean? Poor buddy.
That was my big question with Irina. I was like, he took one for the team.
Yeah, I was like, geez,
No matter
you're
what,
really
he's
gonna
gone.
let this man get off with your girl?
Actually, what I was thinking is, Michelle Monaghan, you don't know this, but you're with a hottie.
She knows it. She was already interested. But she's with a better hottie now. No, but do we all think that, like, well, Jake Gyllenhaal has to figure out how to be a teacher now? Like,
we are going ahead. Like, let's at least catch the plot up to where we are in this.
Back.
So I do want to touch on quickly. We do figure out who the bomber is. It's this guy type of face. Just the way, like, you look at him and you're like, I know it. Yeah, Noah said it. I knew in the first time you see him, that's the bad guy.
Yep. He drops the wallet.
Look,
oh yeah, that's key.
Yeah.
you know that he played lacrosse at Duke. That's all I'm saying.
So bad guy's name, Derek Frost, played by Michael Arden. He's got one of those faces.
Yeah,
I do like those moments though where I like those moments where Coulter it just confronts him and he's like, how do you know so much?
Yes.
And then of course he like opens up his van and he's like, look at what I've done, look at what I've created.
Because he's proud of it.
And he's got big like DC villain energy where he's like,
Yeah.
we need to build a new city from the rubble.
From the rubble.
It's like very cliche.
Rachel Gould
This is
in a van.
this movie was 2011, right?
Yep.
So when did the first Batman come out?
The 60s.
You have to be specific about first Batman.
Yeah.
I think
I
Batman
mean,
Begins was like 2008.
I'm talking
or
about
2004.
No.
Batman Begins.
Really, 2004?
2006.
2004 or 5. It's 4 or 5.
6.
No, look it up.
All right, fine. We're going to have this argument.
I think it's 5. I think it's 2005.
For some reason, I thought it was 8.
Yeah, it
I
just
know I'm
like
wrong.
5.
Yeah.
sort of mid 2000s leading into like 2010, 2011. This feels like it was a common concept, or like in movies that you saw where it's
We
like,
need to
oh,
rebuild.
the world needs to be destroyed in order to be rebuilt. And
Yeah.
there's still that message here and there now, but it was definitely more prevalent during that
Yeah.
time because everything was a little too good, I guess.
Mhm.
But it's one of those things where now that message seems so obvious in this movie, or like, oh yeah, that's just a common villain perspective. But when you watch the movie for the first time, you're like, this is an interesting concept, you know?
Mhm.
So like anticipating who the villain was, when I first saw this, I do remember like being surprised,
Yeah.
or like there was still that element of surprise all throughout the movie because it was something I wasn't familiar with at the time. But now I think there are so many movies that kind of have a similar trajectory
cliche
or a
now.
similar setup.
Yeah, like,
and,
isn't that-
and so in retrospect, this movie feels very simple.
Isn't that very like Lex Luthor's whole thing? It's just like, I'm gonna rebuild the city.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot. I stowed away from my microphone. Need to be recorded. A lot of these kind of, I guess terrorist types are pretty diluted like that. So it's,
Yeah.
not unheard of to be. I don't think it's that far removed from reality. It kind of seemed like his
No,
whole
it's not.
setup in his, van, all these bombs were like super pristine
Yeah.
and stuff instead of like, dirty homemade fertilizer bombs.
Right.
But
Yeah.
But it's like the whole terrorist attack was the new fresh topic
yeah.
somewhat after 2001 for
Mhm.
obvious reasons. Definitely that's the information being fed to the public in
Mhm.
general. And now for me this feels a little distant or like old hat, kind of
Yeah.
like that's an old topic,
Yeah.
So it's strange how movies like this sort of change as your perspective changes when
Yeah.
you age.
Interesting. So yeah.
Interesting.
No, I was. I meant that
I know,
respectfully.
I know.
I just didn't have anything to add to what
Respectfully.
you said. I agree exactly.
No,
with
I
what you said.
kind of fumbled my way
Interesting.
through that. But
No,
you
that
didn't. You're fine.
that was not meant to be a dismissive interesting. That was honestly
Good job, Irina. You had a
interesting.
good point. Go sit in the corner.
So moving on, we do. He thwarts the terror attack. The first it happens once when he actually confronts the guy, and he then shoots both him and her somehow. I don't know how this guy got the drop on them like that. How he let that happen, but whatever. I get it. So then he strikes a deal with Vera Farmiga's character. Why don't I have her name? Oh, Captain
Goodwin.
Colleen. Yeah, Goodwin.
Goodwin.
This is the point where, okay, we know they have the information they need. Good job, Coulter. And then he's like, just let me go back in. Let me save them. Let me see what happens. Just give this to me and then disconnect me.
Why is
So he
she
goes
the
back
only one
in.
in this site that's wearing uniform?
Yeah, I don't know. I hadn't noticed that, but yeah, that's weird.
Everyone knows superiors don't have to wear uniforms, and then everybody else, they're just scientists.
Maybe it's part of the performance in front of him.
Right.
I don't
And
know.
they're not actually
Uh,
the U.S. government. They're the terrorists. It's all.
Whoa, that's a whole man. That'd be an interesting sequel idea.
Well, I do think probably she and this guy might be the military representatives in control of the, I guess, situation. I don't really
Source
know.
code.
I don't really know how those labs work out, but
I do think it would, if you were to try and expand on it, be
Yeah.
connected to the fact that, oh yeah, she can be militaristic about this, but
Yeah.
also it's something familiar to him. It's like it's a person in uniform giving
yeah,
him
that's what I was
directions.
gonna say.
Like
yeah.
he's not going to
Yep.
listen to just some rando who's
Some
saying, "Hey, go
scientist
back
dude.
and
Yeah.
figure out who detonated this
Yeah,
bomb."
I was gonna say
Yeah.
exactly that. Like it could also be that she
well,
was
also the fact that she's a woman
meant to wear a
seems like
uniform
an
for
interesting choice
that
too,
thing.
because
Yeah.
her being a woman is immediately not as intimidating.
Mhm.
It's sort of an understanding. There's something about that that's kind of disarming.
be a little softer on her.
If you're confused, you're less likely to get aggressive, with the
Mhm.
woman. If it were a guy, I don't know, you might be a little more combative about it. But anyway, we might be reading a little too much into that, because I don't think
Yeah.
it was really thought through that way.
I think this movie invites a lot of looking into things.
Yeah.
That's kind of where we're
exactly.
Yeah, over scrutinizing some of the
Mhm.
little things. So she reluctantly finally gives in, and then we have our moment where Jake Gyllenhaal's like, I'm just trying to see all the good in the world, and I bet you can make these. I bet you can make these people
Oh my
laugh.
gosh,
on
that
this
part.
thing." He's like, money's money, blah blah blah. Like that struck. This was another part that struck me as like out of some sort of Christmas movie where like, oh, this is the part where
We
let's
all
just
sing
appeal.
Christmas carols.
Yeah, we all like.
I thought it made sense because he knew going in like this is the last hurrah, and that it's his
I like
last
it.
dying breath.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna make everything as positive as
No,
possible.
and that's
I
I
really
like it.
liked
Though.
it.
I like it though. It's like very sweet almost.
Yeah,
like the,
no, it
Yeah.
was really touching.
And the
Yeah.
music too, like the score really comes in at this point. And let me credit the score. I actually kind of liked the music in this movie. Chris Bacon.
Crispy
Crispy
bacon.
bacon.
crispy bacon.
Yeah, Chris. What if I gotta figure out if his middle name starts with an E, because that would be amazing.
So
Crisp E Bacon.
So we have crispy bacon and Hawk Cock, the executive producer.
Sorry.
Sorry if
crispy
he
bacon.
pronounced your name wrong.
What? That is how you say it.
Did you look it up?
It's C-O.
It's Coke.
C-H.
Could
No,
be-
American
it's-
could be
pronunciation is
Kosh.
Coke.
Or Coke.
I disagree.
David.
It's like
I disagree for the sake of
Although
my
it is German for chef, so maybe he's the one that got the crispy bacon there. So
I did have a question for you guys
There you
though.
go.
We had just talked about it where he gives the name of the terrorist and just before this whole wholesome moment where he goes back and saves everyone.
Mhm.
Did you guys watch that and then get the feeling of, oh wait, what? Like that's
Before he
it?
saves all of them.
Yeah,
Like when
where they just find out the name and the car and whatever, and they just, oh yeah, he's been apprehended, and then you just move on to the next thing. You're like, wait a minute, like I
Yeah.
thought there was a whole build up for this, but
Yeah, I think the buildup is to the reveal
Yeah,
later on. Like
yeah.
that's it. Yeah, it feels weirdly like muted. Like, oh, yep. Well, I think that's part of the intention of the design of this to make it just seem like, all right, well, on to the next thing. Like, all right,
moving on.
This is the program now.
Yeah, I guess
because if they focused on that, it would be like the story's not over yet.
yeah,
It'd be too much emphasis. It'd feel like it was over. Then people would be like, "Wait, what?
Yeah.
It's not done." You know?
Yeah, but even before, like once we do finally, he saves everybody. It's successful. The 8 minutes passes and the world continues. At that point, I'm kind of like, oh, he kind of gets to have this moment, but it's not really like the real thing, right? You know, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And then it's revealed, like, you don't even know what you've done. You've discovered a whole new, like, you've figured out multiversal type stuff. You created an alternate timeline. And in this timeline, everybody was saved and the accident never happened. And now we're at that point where I think this is the intention of the director to kind of leave you with the question of like, oh gosh, what does this mean? Like, it's on the surface, it's a happy ending because he gets to live out his life. But what does this future look like? You know, like that's the moral question of the movie is like, is it okay to live someone's like when you think about it, in this alternate reality, Fentress is not dead.
Yeah.
But he hijacked this guy's mind.
That's what I'm.
Well, I did wonder, like,
Wonder
if
Woman.
once he
Interested
goes
about.
into him, what if Sean is like in his previous body, like they just swapped or something?
Well, they don't say that.
They
Like,
don't.
That's the.
But I can interpret it that way.
Yeah, that's the weirdness of this movie. For one, Christina, Michelle Monaghan's character, doesn't know he's actually this other guy inside. And two, David, he's got to learn this occupation as a teacher, do all this other stuff. Then he's got to wrestle with since he knows that Fentress isn't dead, he's got to sleep with that at night. Like, well, where's Fentress?
Is it like,
Okay.
like Get Out, you know,
What?
where he's just in the dark place or whatever?
Yeah. Well,
Sunken
I like
place.
to think, what if, like, Sean didn't go away, but they're both existing within the same vehicle, and eventually
They
Coulter just
assimilate?
kind of merges with
assimilate.
this Sean character.
Hulk smash.
You know?
Yeah. My other thought that is the more like, maybe this makes more sense, is when he tells Vera Farmiga's name, the Goodwin. That, hey, there's a guy in there named Coulter. Obviously, you know him. Take good care of him. I want to think that will mean that she'll pull the plug on him, and then maybe that's when Fentress takes back over once he's out of. Like, see, I don't know. Like, there's so many. Like, I don't.
But that would be in another world.
Irina did bring that up, actually. We were discussing
That's
that
true.
maybe the reason he is alive
Universe.
still after they pulled the plug is because in this new reality, his brain is still alive. So as long as that body's still alive,
it's like a weird loophole where he can keep existing, but it wouldn't happen for everyone else.
So weird.
Maybe we can have a situation in which based on how this world works, he could technically get his body back.
transfer his mind into his old body.
Yes.
Even though he has nothing lower than his abdomen.
No. But here's the thing. Suppose if he finds a dead person soon enough before that event,
well,
he can transfer into his own body before he dies.
So you have to take me back again.
Yeah.
Something else that breaks this is, wouldn't Fentress, for this program to be this close to being figured out, wouldn't Fentress have already been, like, they have to have their synapses or their brains connected already? This is breaking my brain. I'm probably thinking too hard about this.
No, you're not. I think some of these lines aren't very concretely.
This movie gives just enough to make it engaging and like you can keep up with it, but not enough to give you any answers.
Yeah, so it's a really, really interesting concept, but they do bend their own rules.
Yeah, it's not perfectly clean.
The way it works for me is if he has been assimilated into Sean. Because if you think about it, the brain only tries to establish you as one individual because you're operating one body.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are to release someone from their body and put them in someone else's body, they will start to try and assimilate into that one body. So the only way it makes sense in my head is that his consciousness was transferred to Sean. Sean's still there. It's like, it's not just replaced.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where would Sean go exactly?
Yeah.
Because he still exists in that world, that alternate universe. He still exists.
So this
Nothing
is how
happened to him. So it's just, there is that knowledge basically inputted into Sean. And that's...
But then what about souls?
Well, that's a whole different topic.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my whole reasoning for it. I don't think that's what they meant to say, but...
Yeah. AJ, you got any thoughts or theories about the end here?
No, I mean, I think it just explores, I think maybe the term for what we're talking about would be, in, I guess, the nous, kind of from Greek philosophy, Aristotle, and other stuff. That's the N-O-U-S, nous, not N-O-O-S-E. Where you have this kind of consciousness, intellect, awareness, reason that kind of pervades beyond the corporeal.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot that can be talked about in the end of it.
Yeah, I'm just like...
There's just... I just think this is something that Duncan Jones struggles with. He's really good at interesting concepts, but I don't think he's ever been very good about, the exact science of how something's going to work.
He points you to the section of the library about this stuff. He's like, hey, I bet you didn't know about this stuff. And then you're like, hey, go have fun.
Go check it out.
Yeah. because and I also think, and I actually kind of respect this decision. It is counterintuitive to the story a little bit. I really respect that. Like, he could have gone the easy way and just had him end his existence, and it all was,
he died.
Poof. And that was the story. And that would have still been a really good ending. However, he was like, nah, we're going to take it one step further. He gets to freaking live. He's the hero.
Yeah.
How's it work? Don't worry about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly what he did. And it's hard for me to be upset about it.
No,
sorry, Fentress, you were a boring canvas, and I'm going to paint over you.
Yep.
Kind of. Yeah. I actually like Noah's original joke of it being... a start to DID. So this is actually a prequel to Split, actually. So they just kept reinserting a new person into the body of whoever that character was.
There you go, Fentress.
No, in Split. Like that's how he got so many personalities.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a crossover.
It's numerous Jake Gyllenhaals.
You heard it here first. Split,
I mean,
the
we
Split
didn't think
universe.
Split would be a crossover.
We're not offending anybody with this conversation.
Yeah, not at all.
Yeah.
So I think what you're saying, Noah, like I definitely see that as a Duncan Jones trend to have at least a positive outlook on a negative concept. where there are so many people that when they tackle concepts like this, their instinct is to go for the negative or be in...
Well, yeah, because movies had a tendency to be positive in the beginning.
Right.
So they're like, yeah, you always got to have the hero win the day, do that.
Right.
And so all these little snobs started turning their noses up at good endings. They're like, no, we got to be real. And that's fine in its own context.
Or it's like they try to focus on the drudgery of humanity.
Yeah.
Like,
and I think that
we're all actually just sick animals or whatever. But I think something Duncan Jones does is like, yeah, but there's something good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are good people.
Exactly.
There is something more valuable than just, everyone's out for themselves.
Yeah.
But, and that's consistent with a lot of his work. And especially when I think about Moon, it's something that is, when I remember the story, it does seem negative, but it still managed to spin kind of a positive side at the very end.
Yeah.
Where like, oh yeah, he does get saved, at least in some way. So that I see that in this movie as well.
It is the same. One version of this guy does get saved, kind of.
It's putting humanity in the simulation.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there is a part where someone, like, he does kind of rule out that one argument people would have of, oh, it's just, his own subconscious creating this world. And he incorporates that by saying definitively with the whole, like, Coulter and Christina walking towards the bean in Chicago.
Yeah. And then Goodwin reading the text.
Yeah. And he says, like, do you believe in fate? Because he had a flash forward of this event that he hadn't actually experienced yet. And so it's sort of like Duncan Jones saying, hey, this is real. This isn't just a figment or whatever.
Yeah.
It's going on currently.
Yes. I think when you boil down the problem with how the science doesn't really work, it's just the fact that, okay, how is a brain like transferring or making another dimension or whatever reality?
Yeah.
Just put a
if it's contained within a brain, then it's not real. But if it's real, then how scientifically is just a brain and a machine spawning a new universe whenever it's built just to look into memories? So that's kind of the problem there. But in my head, I just liked the ending. Yeah. To such an extent that I'm like, well, you know what? I can overlook it.
Well, it is one of those endings where, depending on who you are, you can interpret it the way you want. Where it's like this could be your happy ending.
Yeah.
Or it can be like, oh, what does this mean?
Right.
You can follow it down both roads, and those are both plausible interpretations.
Mm-hmm. But I do earlier. I was kind of critical of the I guess the doomer kinds of movies, but I actually still think there's a place for those movies, and they can be really interesting and very intriguing, and there's actually nothing wrong with having that perspective.
Right.
It's just the idea that is superior to a happy ending is the problem.
Right.
Yeah. Like this is better.
Yeah. So they're both good in their own ways.
Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts on source code before we move on to the other portion of this podcast? Oh, I have one final thought. I actually love how quick-paced this movie is. And I noticed the runtime. It is like a smooth 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just, hits
where
it needs to hit.
There's never a slow moment.
Yeah, there's no fat on this movie whatsoever. All right. With that said, let's close out the story portion of this podcast, and on the other end we'll be getting into, and we're going to take a quick break, and on the other end we'll be getting into our thoughts on the film, or with our brief reviews and numbered scores, go into what critics thought, do some box office, and close out with a little bit of franchise talk. So we'll see you then. Welcome back. Let's talk source code. David, you got our scores there in a bowl. You want to pull them at random?
Mm-hmm. Alrighty, first Well, that's 2 of them. First up is Irina with a 7.5.
Yeah.
7.5.
I really like this movie. I still think I prefer Moon over this one for sure, but also prefer this over Mute. But
I would hope so.
Really?
Wait, who gave this a 7.5?
yeah.
Hey, Noah, newsflash. She prefers this over Mute.
Oh,
Surprise.
big surprise.
Yeah, but I gave this a 7.5. So, what?
A 7.5 for Irina is
That's
a
pretty
4.
low.
Yeah.
What? Really?
It is a pretty low Irina score.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's fine.
No, I like this movie, but obviously I had forgotten it before, and when I knew I was going to watch it, I was like, oh yeah, okay, I remember that being decent, but there wasn't really anything about it that really won me.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a casual view for me. I do love the concept that it brings up. It recalls something I would watch in a classroom setting where, I'm in a philosophy class and, the teacher assigns this to watch or we watch it all together. And then we have a discussion afterwards of like, the repercussions of this kind of thing, or what do you think happened? That kind of.
You have 2 train tracks and you can pull the lever to run over somebody.
It's a fun question.
Yeah, it's the cart. What is it called? The cart thought? Or,
yeah. It's cart something.
Yeah. It's like either, the train's heading towards
4 people, or you could
one
change
person,
the track.
or you could change it to go and take out 5 people. You have the choice.
I just imagine Duncan Jones being the
Both.
type that's like, I choose both paths. Ha ha ha. Just, stick the finger to the person that posed the question. But,
Yeah. Which honestly, F that person.
yeah, I
posed
know,
that
right?
question.
It was like,
You know?
thanks. No, it's like, I'm going to have my ending the way I want.
It's like your mom's
Yeah.
on one side, but random 5 people on the other side.
Yeah.
You're like, really?
Yeah, but I think it's a good movie. I wish there was a little more put into the discovering of the bomber. Everything else feels like a little bit childish in my mind as far as these interactions with other people, where I know where it's coming from and I know it's trying to have this wholesome like humanity spin on it, but it was brought up before that it feels like all of these people are just caricatures of people you meet in public. They didn't feel too real, but I get that there's not really a lot of time to play with that. So it's fine in that scenario. It all just kind of boils down to, will I watch this again? Probably not, unless someone just put it on the TV while I was doing something else.
Because I've decided my miniseries is actually going to be to watch this movie 8 times in a row.
Oh, okay. I'll
You have to dive first.
I'll play Animal Crossing in the background.
You have to explode.
Yeah, the joke is this, that I took the time loop thing literally. We are literally going back in time and watching this movie 8 times.
I would say I'm glad Duncan Jones was put in charge of this project, and I'm glad that it has Vera Farmiga and Jake Gyllenhaal in it, because I think Jake Gyllenhaal carried this. If it were anyone lesser, this movie could have easily been kind of laughable.
Jim Carrey would have done a good job.
Yeah, Jim Carrey. Anyway, I think Jake Gyllenhaal is really the driving force for this character, because he put in so much emotion and personable aspects to the character that you would see on paper, but it wouldn't transfer well if you had anyone lesser. Yeah. So I give a lot of credit to him. And I think it is a fun topic, and I like that it sparks conversation, but it's a movie that doesn't really stand out too much from there. So I'm going to keep it at my 7.5. I don't have anything incredibly insightful to say about it. So.
All right. Next up is Reese with an 8.5.
Yeah, I put this exactly at the level of Moon, but for different reasons. Like, I think Moon is more contemplative and is overall a smarter movie. But this movie is more fun. Like, just from start to finish, it's a ride, and it's also giving you, like, throwing revelations at you every second, and it's just the performances. The main 4 performances are good, I think. Like, yeah, all the the background characters are like kind of laughable, but from start to finish, it's just like, I love these time loop movies. At this time, it had not happened a lot, so the idea was still fresh. And I almost wish y'all could take yourselves back and, like, oh, just experience it. How was this the first time when you watched it? Like, oh, I have no idea what's happening. Like, it's one of those movies that doesn't maybe hold up as well on the rewatch. But the first time when you see, like, for me, an image that still kind of haunts me in this movie is just, like, the reveal of his body, even though, you know, he's like mostly dead. It's just kind of, like, shocking. And there's a lot of, like, and it's also a movie that just is satisfying. Like, by the time the credits roll, even if it's kind of ambiguous as to what this means for the future, just all the things you want this movie to do, it does. Like, it keeps throwing twists and turns at you, and it gives you a satisfying ending that can be interpreted in many different ways. It's kind of one of the original multiverse movies, along with Donnie Darko, which I didn't know was a thing Jake Gyllenhaal was into. But the first time I watched this movie, I didn't even really think it was that until I did reading on it for this watch. I was like, oh, it was a multiverse thing. He's creating other timelines. That's interesting. Like, I was kind of blissfully ignorant to the fact that movies had been doing this before Marvel, and to figure out that like, Jake Gyllenhaal's been doing this for a while. It's
wait, Marvel's not original?
I know, I should. But yeah, I just really, this movie has my number. I don't think it's perfect, as evidenced by my 8.5, but I really enjoy it and do personally find it to be a memorable watch. And I just, like, I like this movie. And if I had a gun to my head and I had to pick my favorite Duncan Jones movie, I might pick this one. I know that sounds crazy.
Rule out one immediately, and then you've got 3.
Yeah, it's the thing is, like, I see Duncan Jones as this weird. His directorial situation is weird. For me, he's got 2, like, top tier kind of sci-fi movies, and then he just falls off a cliff. Like, I don't know why that it's happened that way for him so far. Like, where he just seems so on top of his first 2 movies, like, just, and then just to seem like the following movies, they seem like they are on top of him, and he has no, like, grasp over how to make them work. Whereas, like, his first 2 films are so dialed in perfectly, whether or not you like agree with the logic of the film or not. It's just from a entertainment standpoint and writing, it works.
I'm
Whereas
curious, and this goes into our later portion of the podcast. I think we had a theory of the effects on a director of budget constraints. So I'm curious, the numbers on this.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're
Mute, which was like blank check, and Warcraft, I'm sure wasn't cheap. I can't remember.
Nope, that was like $165 million movie, and yeah, this one was this was approaching the mid-budget level, so, like, probably where he should have stayed before he, like, maybe do a few others like this before he moves into the huge leagues. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Source Code, and out of those 3 movies that came out in that time, Adjustment Bureau, Limitless, and this one takes the cake for me. Out of those weird kind of sci-fi adjacent thinker action movies. All right, 8.5. Right.
Next up is David, me, with an 8.
Nice.
So splitting the difference there. I've only seen this once, and I wouldn't say I had a low expectation going in, but this kind of surprised me. I liked it more than I expected to, I guess. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed the kind of movie this was. I liked the kind of murder mystery, kind of reliving the same thing, having
or
to
disaster mystery, I guess.
Mystery. Well, and you're kind of having to solve it with them through this. Yeah, people are murdered for sure.
That's true. That is true.
It's definitely not a perfect movie, and ironically, because the fat was trimmed so much on this, I actually think that they left some of the meat on the cutting room table. You know, I think that what they did was great. Like the way they trimmed it down was good, but there is more I think that would have enhanced this movie.
Yeah.
More explanation on how source code works, more character development with him and Goodwin maybe. There's so many different areas I think that could have been enhanced. So 8 seems fair for that perspective, but this is one of those few movies where like at the end of it, I was like, I could watch this the next day, you know, and try to look for more. I was intrigued by it. So definitely not a time wasted. So a really good movie. If you're contemplating seeing it, highly recommend.
Awesome.
Next up.
So it was rewatchable.
Oh no.
Oh wait, what was that other movie that you thought was so rewatchable that I think you gave it a 7?
I don't know. Lots of movies.
Yetis come to mind. Football.
Yeah.
What if Yetis went back in time?
Minority Report. Yeah.
I think
that
you
would be
match. You know, if we found your dead body, your mind would match to the dead body of a Yeti.
Probably.
I'd be playing football.
If there's a
ahead of
movie
Leia.
about that, David would definitely give it a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Of course, we're referencing the fact that David scored Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor a 7 out of 10. And you can find that 5-minute review on the feed if you dig for it.
Mm-hmm.
Continue.
Oh, also, last but not least with my review, I think this is easily my favorite Duncan Jones. I did like this more than Moon. As good as Sam Rockwell was in that movie, I could have seen less of his face. I kind of liked having...
What?
You are wrong.
It's just him the whole movie, basically.
You are wrong.
Look, I actually I told Reese beforehand I was going to save this until the very end because I didn't want to bring up the argument until right now. So
That is like...
I like Jake Gyllenhaal more than Sam Rockwell.
You can like Jake Gyllenhaal more than Sam Rockwell and not think...
Yeah, but
have that opinion.
But yeah, Sam Rockwell carried Moon is what you're trying to say.
I mean, he did carry Moon. I just think Jake Gyllenhaal carried this movie more.
I don't think so.
That's fine.
yeah,
I think you're just bedazzled by his big blue eyes and long lashes.
As someone
he's a pretty guy.
who maybe slightly prefers this one to Moon, I would disagree in the sense of who is carrying a movie more because Moon
because
is like
Sam Rockwell had to because there's no one else in the freaking movie.
He does something that's harder than what Jake Gyllenhaal does, which is like he makes just him being the screen presence. Like
I'm not saying what he did was harder or not as hard.
He is what adds to basically the message of that movie or the core of that movie. And if he were replaced by someone who's like more attractive, I don't think people would be distanced from that.
I think Jake Gyllenhaal could have done it.
No, I think there's too much of a like, yeah, that's an actor, you know.
Well,
playing
I
this
think
role, whereas Sam Rockwell feels
at
like
the time
a
Jake
real
Gyllenhaal
person.
wasn't a big name.
Okay, here's what I'll say.
Bigger than
October
Sam
Here's
Rockwell.
what I'll
Skyman.
say. I think right now we need to not state our opinions too much, double down too hard. You need to rewatch Moon.
All right. I'll
It
rewatch
has
Moon.
been a while.
No, honestly, I think it really does come down to the content because I do like
Anyway.
Sam Rockwell. It's the kind of movie it is.
Sorry to step on your review.
That's
This
fine.
Is your
Yeah,
review.
no.
It's less of a review
this
now,
wasn't
but-
his review of the movie. This was his
My injected
comparing it
opinion at the end.
to
Gotcha. Yeah,
yeah.
you were trying to stir the pot.
I just wanted to make it known because Reese brought up his sort of like potential to like this more than Moon. I just wanted to make it clear that I did like it more than Moon, and it's more to
and
do
it's because of
with
Jake Gyllenhaal.
he's so hot. But
I love me some Jake Gyllenhaal.
The content, I think that this is faster paced. And there's nothing wrong with liking Moon more. They're both equally production level wise and acting wise very equal. It's just the content. It's a faster pace. I like the action. I liked how you're constantly on the edge of your seat with this one. Whereas Moon is more, I guess, is more of a thinker. So, you know, I'm not a very cerebral person. I'm kind of dumb. So when it comes to Moon, I don't, always want to sit through watching Sam Rockwell argue with himself.
David,
loved
you
it.
need to give yourself more credit. You went deep on that Donnie Darko episode more than any of us did.
What I don't have
Talking
in
about
intelligence,
not
I
being
make
a
up with
cerebral
confidence. Okay,
person.
what I don't have in cerebralness, I make
Cerebralness. Okay, maybe you prove your
you
point.
won us over. you
I
have a
make
good
up.
argument.
I double down in confidence.
That should be in the dictionary, though. The cerebralness of the character was
Explosionary.
Explosionary.
all right.
All
Next,
right, next up, AJ with potentially an 8.
8? Question mark?
8.
Yeah.
I interpreted that correctly. I think AJ's new favorite thing to do is not give me his exact score and make me have to figure out what it is.
Well, sometimes it's open to interpretation.
I would love it if you'd send him like a math equation that he has to solve to get the answer.
Well, that would be him sending it to me, and then I would have to solve it improperly.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Gosh, and I'm bad at math, so who knows what the answer would be.
The limit does not exist. Yeah, so I have an equal weight of agreement with Irina and Reese here. So one day I'll probably be more on the Irina side. One day I'll probably be more on the Reese side here. And hence, me splitting the difference between their scores. I do think that this is a little too streamlined. Like David said, it could use it a bit more, I don't want to say gristle, but a little bit more complexity, maybe a kink or twist in the timeline, one more little bit of added complexity here. But overall, it's, easily digestible and fun. And I think there's, merit to the argument that, we've kind of gotten used to this kind of thing. But at the time, maybe it was more novel. I'm not as a huge fan of Vera Farmiga. And I think that's just honestly because I'm not saying she's bad. I just kind of, we talked about this with Michael Cera. Like, you see him as whatever character you saw him in first. And for me, it was the Bates Motel show where she's Norman Bates' mother.
No.
So that's basically
She's not good in that?
No,
It's
she's
not
excellent.
that. She's excellent. It's
the
just
character
the character
is just not a likable person.
Yeah.
But it's interesting going back and seeing her earlier work, and she does good in this.
Oh yeah.
But it's every time I see her in something, I immediately jump to Bates Motel.
I call that the Walking Dead effect with John Bernthal.
Yeah.
Until it took a long time for me to come back around on him, and now I have.
Who is that?
He's the guy. Okay, have you seen
Punisher.
Walking Dead?
I've seen
Punisher.
Oh, yeah.
But I just hated him in Walking Dead.
Oh yeah. He was pretty awful.
Yeah.
So,
continue.
Yeah. I think this is kind of Duncan Jones gave this a good treatment for something that he didn't originally create. Wasn't a passion project for him. I don't know as much of the background of this, the story, but we've all seen what can happen if he gets his, real true creative passion project, and that's what Mute was apparently. So I'm glad it wasn't that. This is a good performance from Jake Gyllenhaal. Overall, a bright spot and fun movie. I just wish she explored a little bit more depth of the potential of the multiverse, timeline, psychological kind of identity stuff that could have been tapped into a little bit more instead of just a kind of blockbuster cash in. But, it is what it is. I think 8 is appropriate.
All right. So far, I have the highest score marginally, and Irina has the lowest score marginally.
Although that's a very small gap, 7.5 to 8.5.
There's a range here. Let's see if Noah upends things here.
Last but not least, we have Noah with a 9.
Yeah, I'm going down to 8.5, and it's the only reason is literally just the fact that the science, not only does it not hold up, it really doesn't hold up. But I overlook a lot of that just because I really like the heart of the movie. It's more just that, because throughout the movie I wasn't really thinking about it. It was just kind of like, oh yeah, weird science makes thing happen. But then you actually do think about it for a moment, and it's like, well, I don't know that they even really thought it through. And so I was going to dock a 0.5 for that. And I think 8.5 is still really good. And if I recall my score from Moon, I think I gave Moon a 9. And I
9.
like
5.
Moon. I gave it a 9.5?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Well, I like Moon a pretty good level above this one. And probably just because I really like Sam Rockwell. I don't know. I have to
remember
rewatch
your
it too.
emphatic energy on that one.
I loved Sam Rockwell in that movie, and everything, but specifically that movie. But we're talking about this one right now, Source Code.
Oh, okay.
I think this one. I think this is. I think this is a really entertaining movie. I really like the concept, and I really like the heart of it. The acting is there, and you can tell that they did put a lot of thought into, the story elements of it. And I think it's just really fun. really entertaining. It has a great ending. I love this kind of touching ending. And yeah, that's my review. 8.5.
So if we did, instead of numbered scores and did more like a kind of like a school's type, letter grade, I guess source code would be like a C++.
I'm thinking, like, when I think of if it gets into the 8s, I'm almost thinking like a B minus.
That is it.
I was thinking B
joke.
plus.
Oh, source code. Gotcha.
Dang it! I feel dumb.
We are dumb.
That's funny.
AJ,
a good one.
you want to crunch those numbers for us?
Yeah, so source code, our group average is an 8.1. And
All
on
right.
the list, compared to the rest of the titles, all right, Treasure Planet. And actually, we got quite a few 8.2s. Interview with the Vampire, Die Hard with a Vengeance, The Road to El Dorado, and Treasure Planet, all with 8.2s. Mentioning Donnie Darko at an 8.3, the other Jake Gyllenhaal movie we recently covered. And below it, we have Ocean's 13 at a 7.9.
All right.
And then, just for kicks, I did the math on our Duncan Jones filmography here. So, Duncan Jones, his 4 movies, we have group average of a 6.5.
6.5. There we go.
He was tanked by Mute. That means
Mute brought it way down. I mean, I know Warcraft is
yeah, so we're including Warcraft in there, which was one of the
6,
old
right?
audio episodes. 5.5 is the group average there.
Oh, okay. 5.5.
I feel like all of our kind of grading styles have evolved since then.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe that.
And Mute, what was that, 3 or something?
3.5 was Mute.
Really tanked it.
Yeah. God, that was a
someone
bad
made,
movie. That makes Warcraft look like a masterpiece.
It does.
Is Duncan Jones the first director we've completed the filmology?
Filmography?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, add that to your list of importance.
Yeah.
I'm just leaning into my special needs.
I think he has to be. There's one other director that technically we've completed, and that was the guy who did Snow White and the Huntsman and Ghost in the Shell. He only did 2.
How close are we to Edgar Wright? We need the Cornetto, and then we need...
Oh, we're way off.
Yeah, we have a lot.
We got a lot. We've only done one of his.
No, I know we have a lot, but he's someone that we could easily cover within a few...
We've got 5 more for him.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't think Last Night in Soho wanted a sequel.
Oh,
so
that's
we won't
right. Soho.
that.
Yeah. I keep forgetting
yeah,
that
you
one,
do
'cause I haven't
Baby
seen
Driver in the Cornetto trilogy.
Yeah.
So 4, but it still wouldn't be his full filmography. But yeah, Duncan Jones, he's the first one with more than 2 films, more than 3 films to actually, we wrapped up his filmography. Maybe we'll circle back around to Warcraft further on down in the future and give it another go round for the official feed. But that is not going to happen anytime soon, I can tell you. All right, moving on to critics. By the way, before I move on, I do think that 8.1 is fair for source code in regards to the company it keeps on the list.
Yes.
So, all right, moving on, critics. Rotten Tomatoes, this movie has a 92%.
Wow.
With an audience score. I actually think that's higher than Moon. With an audience score of 82%. So one of the rare cases where the critics are higher than the audience on Rotten Tomatoes. Metacritic, the movie has a 74, and audience members 7.7. And on IMDb, the movie has a 7.5. So probably if you average all that around, it's probably in the lower 80s.
Moon has 90% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, so source code 2 points higher.
Man, can you 2 90s though? 2 above 90?
Yeah, I know.
That is
good.
crazy.
Box office. Movie released on April 1st in 2011. Also playing at the time were the movie Hop, Insidious, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Roderick Rules, Limitless, and Lincoln Lawyer. The movie is budgeted at $32 million. What do we think this movie did worldwide? And just to give you an idea, Moon, I believe I remember it costing $5 million. So he got more than 6 times the budget to work with for this one, a significant uptick, even though it's still lower to mid-budget for this one. That's crazy when I think about it, because Warcraft was 165, so he quadrupled, and then, he sextupled, and then he quadrupled after that. So pretty crazy.
I'm sorry, what did you say the budget was?
$32 million. So I'll start with you, AJ, first, since you piped in. How much do you think this movie did worldwide?
All right, so April, gosh, all those other things, I was like, oh, that's not any competition. Then you said Lincoln Lawyer, so...
And Limitless.
Yeah,
which did well.
Okay. I'll say triple-ish. Let's say 120.
120. Noah?
I was gonna go around the triple range too, so...
So you got 120, which is actually more like quadruple, but...
Yeah, I rounded up to 40.
Yeah.
So I'll probably go 105.
105?
Yeah, something like that.
David?
So if this is... I saw Lincoln Lawyer and Limitless in theaters, and I think this is better than them.
Were you working at the time? At the theater?
I was, actually.
Yeah.
2011? Wow. I don't remember this. I don't know. Weird.
It's funny, Justin Bieber's on the bottom right there.
Yeah, it is. I'm going to say that this did better than I would normally expect. I'm going to say 145.
Okay, Irina.
What did you say, Noah?
105.
105.
How dare you? 105.
105, 120, and 145 are the ones on the board here. How dare you?
It means I'm going to get
thinking about
undercut.
it.
We're all in the
She's gonna
triple digits.
Yeah,
So
I'm gonna be the only one that didn't go in triple digits. I'm gonna
With
say
Jake Gyllenhaal.
I'm gonna say 99.
Oh.
99.
90. And so close to mine, too.
Sorry.
Well, no, it wouldn't have mattered anyway because David won.
Hey, so was high.
So it did well.
Yeah, the movie made $147 million.
Oh, I was close.
Worldwide. What looks on the surface to be a big hit, but apparently Duncan Jones and others have claimed that the movie, whoever it was, it's not Lionsgate, it's Summit, like kind of mishandled some of the marketing or PR, and it ended up costing more. So not on the film that it didn't maybe make as much money as they wanted. So this would not be viewed as a director's failure, more the handling of it type of from the other departments type of failure. I don't know how it works, but still a win for Edgar Wright. Easily his biggest movie.
Wright?
Sorry, Duncan Jones. Wow,
You're in a different multiverse here.
Yeah, it easily surpassed Duncan Jones' total for Moon. Moon, that's a movie where it actually, you look at its numbers that it did at the box office, weren't great. Like it opened very limited, and yes, it did make a multiple of its budget, but in the grand scheme of things, not very impressive. It was more just like a grower, not a shower, and it kind of just made its money.
Wow.
Post release, and just kind of, it was like the proof of concept for Duncan Jones as director. And that's how he got this. And this gave them the numbers that would indicate like, hey, yeah, this director is someone to watch. So this was honestly, I think this was his ticket to Warcraft. Like this kind of validated him further as like, oh, this guy can maybe handle a bigger budget and still make a good movie.
Okay, think about Moon and Source Code have a similar sort of content.
Yeah.
And then imagine jumping from that to Warcraft.
I know.
He does not seem like the director. If I had to pick a director for Warcraft, Duncan Jones would not even make my list.
So here's the thing. Here's how I think he was able to land this Warcraft thing. Video game movies, you don't hear a lot of prolific directors going like Martin Scorsese's not like, I gotta make Jack and Daxter the movie. Like it's...
I've watched that.
I know. He is one of those... Like video game movies, it's a tough sell to like serious filmmakers. And I think when it came up that Duncan Jones he's like a gamer. He likes video games and he's just into that culture as well. So it was just like this perfect, like, oh, Duncan Jones he's come off 2 big hits critically and even financially. And he loves Warcraft, so he can do this. So that kind of just ended up being this kind of perfect, oh, wow, this is going to be great. And then, of course, it didn't result in the best of things, but it's also not the worst either. That movie's actually, all things considered, a pretty big hit when you don't count domestic. That was a huge, like, worldwide hit. But enough about Warcraft. Yeah, Source Code did decent business. Actually, great business if you don't consider the mishandling of the film. So sequel, right, guys? No? I don't know.
Sequel.
No, not really. Yeah, the massive franchise Source Code, right? 5 movies deep. Jake Gyllenhaal creating ultimate mini multiverses. Yeah, it didn't happen. So back in 2014, Anna Forrester, which is another director, was set to direct the sequel to Source Code. It was announced. It was official, or at least semi-official. Like there were multiple articles I found where it's like officially confirmed Anna Forrester directing Source Code 2. Wow. Like it seemed like this is happening, and then all silent after that. Nothing. It kind of just quietly got canceled or swept under the rug. And I have to imagine this was one of those cases of an announcement happening and then just the reaction to it was muted. Like it, not to say that
muted, huh?
Yeah, there you go. Not to say that people didn't like Source Code. I think it's just not a movie you watch and you're like, yeah, that I can't wait to see what happens next. It's just it is a solitary, like, just it's a self-contained story that does not.
It works on its own.
Yeah, like I could see Duncan Jones doing a weird thing that happens in the same world with the same concepts type of sequel, but I don't want to see what happens next with Jake Gyllenhaal's character. Like I could see this being a fun concept to play around with, but it really does not demand sequels to me. So that kind of got swept under the rug. So more recently, it was announced that Netflix had picked up a sci-fi spec script by Ben Ripley. It is supposed to be a sort of like spiritual sequel to Source Code. And I'm quoting this from Wikipedia, but the new project is supposed to be titled Parallel and is described as a sci-fi heist movie that takes place across parallel universes as it, quote, involves a man and woman who traffic in high-end crimes in parallel universes suddenly meeting, a development that threatens their boss. Determined to outrun their fates, they fight across these different realities to find one where they can both survive and be together. So obviously playing off of that multiple realities, jumping from reality to find, some area where they can... And that's kind of like, if there were to be a sequel to this, that's the direction I'd like to see, where it's not the same character, but you're still playing around with the concept that was introduced in this. So like a pseudo sequel, much like how he did with Mute, but more successful, better, hopefully.
And for the uninitiated, spec script is speculative, or like a speculative screenplay.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. But what would you watch a sequel to Source Code, you guys? And if so, is that idea that's being passed around, does that sound interesting to you?
Definitely.
I think so.
Yeah.
I do like this as sort of a base for an idea.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to see where they would take that as far as whether it be either with his story or just another person that a similar situation has happened to, or even just what that agency is doing, whatever it was, and what is happening afterwards. So I think it's a good platform to sort of jump off in whatever direction you want.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's also something that could fix some of the like issues with this movie and clear up how this multiverse
kind of
stuff works.
Round things out.
Like, just get like explain it just a bit in a way that's, I don't know.
Yeah. I think
palatable.
we're too saturated right now. We're too well versed in multiverse right now.
Yeah.
Well versed in the multiverse.
Yeah. They're gonna do a bunch of sequels, and then what's gonna happen is like 4 or 5 into Source Code's sequels, they're gonna be like, the only one who ended up getting away was Jake Gyllenhaal's character.
Yeah,
like,
that would be
where
interesting.
is he now?
Yeah, like
I-
how did he figure that thing
Yeah.
out?
How did he do it?
I think it would be fun as sort of a continuation in the universe where it's not so much like sweating the facts of, oh yeah, multiverses or whatever, but if they continued the theme of at least there is going to be some kind of mystery element that has to be solved, but it's still within this multiverse concept.
Yeah.
I think that would be fun because that's something you haven't seen
Yeah,
really.
I'd rather them take it the more philosophical approach than the
Yeah.
comic book approach of multiverse.
Right.
All right. Any final thoughts on Source Code before we close this bad boy out? And I'll take the silence as a no, as usual. You know, y'all can say no, so I don't have to
No.
awkwardly.
No. Not at all.
They just leave me in my silence.
Sorry.
Crickets. All right, next week it's big franchise time, baby. We are talking The Terminator. Woo. Diving back into James Cameron. It turns out my series is just diving back into things that we've talked about very recently, and that is James Cameron. So yeah, just knock out a big James Cameron mega hit, and it's gonna be 2 in a row because we're talking about that whole franchise. I know, that's what I'm saying.
No.
It's got to be the biggest
Mega hit.
franchise. Oh, like
Yeah,
the
got it.
Like the
Like an iceberg.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
This has got to be the biggest franchise we've
bad
done
joke.
since Pirates of the Caribbean, though.
This will be our first Schwarzenegger, I think, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is surprising after this many episodes to finally get Schwarzenegger on the board.
I would have expected you to put it on there earlier.
Yeah, well, I had to get Bruce Willis first with Die Hard, I guess.
We'll eventually have one that goes into like Rambo and Predator and all that.
That'll be fun. Alien.
Yeah. Well, I was saying Predator because of Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
True Lies.
Not really a sequel to True Lies, but maybe
well,
who knows?
whatever.
I'd have to research that.
I think actually,
but super excited.
Yeah, maybe. Last time I looked into it, there was a potential.
Cool. Well, I'd love an excuse to watch True Lies sometime soon, actually, because it's been a very long time. But yeah, super excited. Y'all excited to talk some Terminator next week?
I'm excited.
Yeah. Can
baby.
we actually watch this one together to see?
Yeah. Let's do it.
We'll coordinate it.
Hey, AJ, you can fly back from Russia soon to watch this with us, right?
No, there's no outbound flights to Russia right now.
That's right. That's right.
Shouldn't be laughing, I guess, about that, but it was.
I did choose Russia of all places.
All right. Well, y'all have how do I close it? I've already awkwardly closed it out.
Bye.
Yeah, next week, Terminator. We'll see y'all then.
It's the same train, but it's different.